Can you tell the difference between this edit and this one?
Rarely enter a state that athletes commonly call the zone.
Same clips, same transitions, same effects. So why does one feel so much better? The only difference is I removed every single sound effect from the first edit, and yet I'm sure most of you thought that the second one felt way more satisfying. That just goes to show how something that most people forget to add or don't put much thought into is actually one of the biggest reasons why good edits feel so satisfying and impactful. You can have amazing clips, transitions, and effects, but without sound design, the whole edit just feels like it's missing something. And the craziest part, sound design is one of the easiest parts of editing. Yet, it's also one of the things that most editors get completely wrong, which can significantly lower the quality of your edits and might even be the reason why they aren't performing well. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly why sound effects are so important, the different types of sound effects, where to find them, and most importantly, how to properly use them. So why do sound effects even make such a big difference? Well, our brains naturally connect what we see with what we hear. Every action in real life has a sound attached to it. When you type on a keyboard, light a match, or break a piece of glass. Maybe not that one, but you get the point. We spend our entire lives associating movements with sounds, so when those sounds disappear in an edit, something immediately feels off, even if you can't exactly explain why. That's because sound effects makes your edit feel believable. They give your edits visual weight, emphasize important moments, and can even guide the viewer attention to exactly where you want it. For example, here's a clip from one of my recent edits without sound effects. There's a good chance some of you didn't even realize that I added a camera flash effect. And even if you did notice it, it probably did not feel very impactful. Now watch the very same clip with a camera beep and flash sound effect. Those two small sound effects suddenly made the camera flash feel real. It throws the attention exactly where it's supposed to and makes the entire moment just feel way more satisfying. The best sound design isn't something that people notice consciously. It's more like something that you feel. But then you might ask, how do you actually achieve that? Well, the first thing you need to understand is that not all sound effects serve the same purpose. In fact, almost every sound effect you'll use falls into one of these three categories: action sound effects, supporting sound effects, and audio effects. So let's break down each one. The first type is action sound effects. These are the kind of sound effects that you're probably thinking of when someone mentioned sound effects. Things like punches, sword clashes, electricity, and camera shadow. Basically any sound that matches what you're seeing. These sounds make the action feel real because they're exactly what your brain expects to hear. The second type is what I would like to call supporting sound effects. Unlike action sound effects, these aren't tied specifically to one thing that is happening on screen. Instead, they're there to enhance the overall edit. Things like whooshes, impacts, risers, and ambience all fall into this category. For example, if there's a fast transition, you would add a whoosh to emphasize that movement. Or if one clip is building up to a big reveal or impact, you could use a riser leading up to it, followed by an impact as the beat hits. Nothing on screen is specifically creating those sounds. They're simply there to make the edit more energetic, cinematic, and impactful. Finally, there's the type of sound design that most beginner editors don't even think of, and that's audio effect. Unlike the other categories, you're not adding new sounds on top of your edit. Instead, you're changing the music itself to better fit what's happening on screen. For example, my favorite one is lowering the volume of the song right before the beat drops and then bringing it right back up as the beat hits. That small change builds up anticipation and makes the drop much more impactful. Other common techniques include using a muffle effect to make the music sound distant, slowing down the track, or adding a glitch effect to better match what's happening in your edit. These techniques don't add new sounds, they transform what's already there, giving you another way to control the pacing, energy, and emotions of your edit. And while all three types are important, knowing what they are is only half of the battle. The next step is actually finding new sound effects to use. use. But before we get into that, I quickly want to thank today's sponsor, Topview AI. As someone who's making edits constantly, one of the biggest problems with AI video tools is that they usually just throw you straight into generation and hope for the best. What I like about Topview Canvas is that you can actually plan everything first. You can create storyboards, generate reference images, keep your characters consistent, and map out your scenes before turning them into a video. Using Topview, you can do some really cool stuff like manga animation, changing your clips to fit your edit better, or just creating a completely new clip. If you're also an editor that wants more control over their edits, definitely check it out using the link in the description. So now that you understand the different types of sound effects, the next question is, where do you actually get them? And instead of making you guys spend hours searching for sound effects across dozens of websites to celebrate hitting 400k subscribers, I decided to put together a pack featuring the sound effects I use most often in my own edits, and it's designed to give you a solid starting point whether you're completely new to sound effects or you just want to expand your library. If you've ever watched one of my edits and wondered what sound effects I used, you will definitely find them in this pack. And the best part, it's completely free. Just hit the link in the description, download it, and start using the sound effects in your own edits. But of course, if you're looking for a more specific sound effect, you can usually find exactly what you're searching for, and over time you'll naturally build up your sound effect library, so make sure you keep everything organized in folders so you don't spend hours trying to find what you need. But this pack gives you a solid collection of versatile sound effects that you'll find yourself using over and over. And now that you've got the sound effects, it's time for the most important part, how to actually use them. Because while good sound effects can completely transform an edit, bad ones can just as easily ruin an edit. One of the quickest ways to ruin your sound design is by adding sound effects at random. You think of a whoosh you need, so you add it. Then you think of an impact somewhere else and you add that. Then you go back and add a punch sound effect. Before you know it, you're constantly jumping around the timeline, losing track of what you've already added and what you still need to add. That's why having a consistent workflow is so important. It keeps everything organized, helps you focus, and makes it much less likely that you'll miss an important moment in your edit. Here's the workflow I personally use. First, I watch through the whole edit and add all the action sound effects. So if there's anything happening on screen that naturally should have a sound, I add that first. Once that's finished, I move on to supporting sound effects. This is where I add my whooshes, impacts, risers, and everything else that makes the edit feel more impactful. I also make sure that I match the sound effects to what's happening on screen. For example, if there's a clip with a lot of impact, I'll use a stronger whoosh like this one. If it's a smaller transition, I'll keep it subtle with a whoosh like this. Finally, I add the audio effects. This is where I do things like volume dips to the music itself to tie everything together. The most important thing is that I try to never jump back and redo a previous step halfway through. I finish one category, then move on to the next. That way I stay organized and I always know what's already covered. Now, you definitely don't need to follow this exact workflow. Feel free to change it, build on it, or even create your own. The important thing isn't how you organize it, is that you have a consistent system instead of just adding sound effects whenever they come to mind. Having a workflow keeps you organized, but you also need to know when to stop adding sound effects, because one of the biggest mistakes I see editors make is thinking that more sound effects automatically means a better edit. In reality, it's usually the opposite. If you add a sound effects to every little thing, your edit will quickly become cluttered. Instead of making important moments stand out, every sound starts competing for your attention. It's kind of like being in a group conversation where 5 people start talking at the exact same time. Instead of hearing everyone better, you end up understanding nobody because there's just too much going on. All the voices just become background noises. The exact same thing happens in editing. If every single moment have a sound effect, none of them feel special anymore. That's exactly why every sound effect should have a purpose. Before you add one, ask yourself, is this actually making the edit better? If the answer is no, leave it out. The second thing you need to pay attention to is the audio levels. Your sound effects should support the music, not overpower it. If every sound effect is louder than the song itself, the edit would start feeling messy and distracting, which is exactly why I usually lower the audio levels of my sound effects until they blend in naturally with the edit. You want people to feel the impact of the sound effects, not have them dominate everything they're hearing. And finally, what I think is the most important part of sound design: syncing. Even the best sound effects in the world would sound bad if they're out of sync. sync. To show you just how much of a difference syncing makes, here is one of my edits with the sound effects slightly off sync. As you could probably tell, the whole edit just suddenly felt off. The hits didn't feel as impactful, the transitions weren't as satisfying, everything was just disconnected. And the craziest part, I only moved the sound effects 3 frames back. That's it, just 3 frames, and it completely changed the way the edit felt. That's why syncing is so important. Even tiny timing difference that most people would never consciously notice can make an edit feel much less satisfying. So whenever you're adding sound effects, make sure they line up perfectly with whatever is happening on screen. For example, if you're using a punch sound effect, make sure it lines up exactly with the moment where the punch lands. Because even being just a few frames early or late can make the hit feel weak and unnatural. The same goes for transition sound effects like whooshes. The loudest part of the whoosh should line up with the exact moment the transition happens, usually right on beat. That way the sound and the visual work together to create one satisfying moment instead of feeling disconnected. And that's pretty much everything you need to know to start using sound effects in your edits. Remember those 2 edits from the beginning? The only difference between them was the sound design, and yet one felt dramatically better. That's the power of good sound design. And if you want to start putting everything you learned into practice, go download my free sound effect pack using the link in the description. And if you want to learn even more about editing, I have a full editing course where I break down exactly how I make my edits from start to finish. That includes my entire editing workflow that has helped me make edits with millions of views. So if that sounds interesting, you can check it out using the link in the description. Other than that, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to learn how to make your edits flow perfectly, make sure to check this video up next. Peace.